Hello everyone and welcome back to another video on the channel. Today we are reviewing Weapons, directed by Zach Cregger, starring Garner, who's having a hell of a year right now, Josh Brolin, Alden Ehrenreich, Benedict Wong, and many more actors that came as a surprise to me. This movie follows the very creepypasta-esque story about all but one kid in a class going missing, all of whom ran out of their homes at exactly 2:17 a.m. with no sign of where they went. And with this film being from the writer and director of Barbarian, you know you're in for a wild and unpredictable ride.
And they never came back.
So of course I'll be getting into spoilers for Zach Cregger's Weapons, so if you haven't had a chance to watch it just yet, I highly recommend that you do so. This is one of, if not my favorite movie of the year so far, and one that's best if the ride isn't spoiled for you. So go check it out in theaters, and for those of you who have, let's unravel this mystery. The best analogy that I can make for this movie is that it plays like one of those endless rope of colorful handkerchief magic tricks. It just keeps on unraveling in an endlessly fun way, with each new link in the chain being more unique than the last. This film starts off exactly like the first trailer does, with an eerie telling of the night the kids went missing from the voice of some creepy ass kid, before moving into the first chapter of the film titled Justine. This section reminded me a lot of the Netflix series Dark, or even Adolescence to a certain extent. This town unfortunately has to keep moving forward after a month of these kids being missing. The school has to open back up, parents have to go back to work, and the unanswered questions have to continue to linger in the background. And I think this section does a great job at setting the very eerie tone of this town and the people that inhabit it. This chapter follows Garner's Justine as she navigates the fact that all eyes are on her. It was her class that went missing, and one parent in particular, played by Josh Brolin, is highly suspicious of her.
The truth is that I want an answer just as bad as all of you. I love those kids.
But beyond her paranoia and being followed by angry parents or having nightmares of her classroom full of the missing kids, the film highlights this character's spiral into her worst habits. She has a drinking problem, she has an affair with Alden Ehrenreich's Paul, which is such a toxic dynamic, by the way, for the both of them, and she tends to cross boundaries when it comes to her interactions with her students. For much of her section, I found myself honestly disliking the decisions her character made, but was always understanding of her downward spiral because of the flaws in her character. Garner is an incredibly engaging actress. Her performance as Ruth in Ozark is worthy of the Emmys that she's won for that role, and it's great to see her pop up in the film side of things between this, Wolfman, and the Fantastic Four First Steps, which she was great in. But getting to the horror elements of this film, Cregger does a great job at getting under your skin with so many great sequences, especially in the first two chapters of this film. Justine's dream of her entering her classroom full of the missing kids with their heads all down was terrifying, and the visual of the old woman slathered in tacky makeup hovering over her bed was chilling. And the sequence to end off her section had me and my group of friends hollering in the theater as a woman waddles over to her sleeping in her car as she was staking out the home of the one kid who remained. Truly brilliant and unsettling filmmaking at every second of the first two chapters of this film. And speaking of, the second chapter is titled Archer, after Josh Brolin as one of the grieving parents. We get to see similar events to Justine's section, but from a new perspective. We see him following Justine the night of the PTA meeting. It is alluded to him being the one who vandalized Justine's car by painting witch along the driver's side. We see him following up with the police investigation and his need to investigate his son's disappearance by himself by reviewing his home camera footage with the neighbors, played by Justin Long, who also have similar camera footage of their own. This section definitely gave me a Prisoners vibe, with Brolin taking on the Hugh Jackman role. His drive was similarly engaging to the previous section, and at least for this section, I didn't mind the overlapping plot elements that can sometimes feel repetitive when it comes to future chapters. Archer also has a terrifying dream sequence which holds the audience in a state of tension by withholding a potential jump scare at every opportunity that he gets. There's a creepy kid in his bed and he reaches over to turn him to face the camera. In any other film, this would have been accompanied by a loud sound that deflates attention, but Cregger doesn't do that. He holds you in a state of horror and keeps you there until he's ready to make some reveal. Although there is one really odd moment when it comes to this dream sequence where he follows his son outside of his home, and as he runs off, Archer follows, but in running into the woods in front of his home, he ends up running right back out as if he was stuck in some sort of loop. He sees his son run back inside of his house, only this time there's a giant AK-47 hovering over the home, in a very on-the-nose metaphor for the real-world gun violence we see here in the United States. I was very much getting that metaphor throughout Justine's section as well, seeing the memorial betrayal of sorts outside of the school, with the town grieving the 17 kids who went missing, felt very haunting in a real-world sense, but seeing the gun over Archer's home lost any subtlety this movie had at this point. And on top of that, I don't think this movie is really trying to be a deep exploration of this real-world problem, so it definitely felt out of place and honestly a little bit funny. We do further the plot with Archer coming up with some sort of theory that the kids seemed like they were summoned to go to a very specific place, as if somebody rang like a little dinner bell and they all came running off like a guided missile, who are weaponized by some greater power. Get it? Weaponized?
Are you watching?
Assuming they were running directly towards a singular destination, he thinks these kids could be somewhere within the trajectories of both of these missing kids. He goes to confront Justine about it when we see Benedict Wong's character running like the children directly towards Justine to attack her. His eyes are nearly bulging out of his face as it is dripping in blood, another terrifying and bizarre moment that we will circle back to eventually. The next two sections are titled Paul and Anthony, as it follows Alden Ehrenreich and Austin Abrams respectively. Their stories are very much intertwined and are the least directly involved in the mystery at hand. Paul is a cop having an affair with Justine, and Anthony is some random junkie running amok in this town. These two sections do overlap quite a bit here, and it does end up feeling a little bit repetitive, but luckily these sections are the shortest, so in terms of flaws, it ends up being more of a nitpick than anything else, because the way that they tie into the larger story was really great. Paul is self-destructive in a very similar way to Justine, and like I said, they are very much toxic to one another, constantly bickering and bringing out the worst in one another. This section felt very similar to Barbarian in that film's abrupt perspective shift to Justin Long's character. He can't help but to make mistake after mistake in cheating on his wife, resulting in her attacking Justine. He chases after Anthony in a quite humorous scene as he gets poked by a needle in his pocket, causing Paul to sucker punch him in the head, also really funny. In order to not get in trouble from the dash cam, he continues to make poor decisions by letting Anthony go with a warning, and when he sees him outside the police station a little bit later on, he once again chases after him in a very reckless manner. From Anthony's perspective, he's just trying to get some cash in any way that he possibly can, whether it's trying to open every single car door he comes across, or breaking into the worst possible house that he could have possibly broken into when it comes to Alex's house. The way this break-in was edited was very much reminiscent of the tape measuring scene in Barbarian, which had me gleefully terrified the entire time. The state of this home is disheveled to say the least, and because we saw Alex's parents creepily sitting frozen on their couch in Justine's section, I was just waiting to see them around every corner as Anthony goes further into this home. We also get to see our first real answers to the larger mystery within this house. Inside the basement are all the 17 missing kids also standing frozen, which is finally enough to scare Anthony out of this house. But because he is a dumbass and only has one motivation of getting money, it takes him seeing the reward for the missing kids for him to attempt to turn the information over to the police, which is where we loop back to Paul chasing after him for the second time. Paul, of course, continues to make poor decisions after poor decisions by taking Anthony to the creepy home rather than bringing this vital information to literally any other cop, as they probably would have done a better job than this guy. These two sections are definitely my least favorites, as the repetitiveness and tonal shift can be a little bit jarring, but it is still very entertaining, and I think that it does a good job at shifting the story's tone from really eerie and scary to a good blend of horror and comedy, which I was not expecting. I think it could have been one section titled Paul and Anthony. Maybe you could have saved like 5 to 10 minutes of screen time and got the film down to 2 hours flat, but again, most of this is just nitpicking. The film continues its quest for uncovering answers in the next section, titled Andrew. We pick up with Benedict Wong as the principal of the school, with him following up with Justine's welfare check request on Alex's family. We get to meet Gladys, who is Alex's very, very strange aunt. Her face is caked with makeup, and her wig has the most awful bangs that you've ever seen, but this character's eccentricity is honestly quite terrifying. She's determined to keep anyone else from getting too close to Alex's home, to the point where her list of loose ends becomes way too extensive. She's the true witch of this story, who uses personal items, hair, and her own blood to take control of her victims, causing Andrew to bash his partner's head in, which was very gross to see. She then has him target Justine, which brings us back to him running through the entire town in a darkly funny manner. The fight ensues throughout the convenience store, which has seen so much in these past few days, with it climaxing in Andrew being hit by a car. And of course, at this point, Justine and Archer do come together as a team to try to figure out what in the hell is going on. The final section of this film is titled Alex, and we get the rest of the answers to the mystery this film has weaved from its opening scenes. Alex was always a quiet kid and he got bullied a little bit, but his school and home life were completely normal until Gladys came along. She is dying of some terminal illness, and her taking control of Alex's parents was supposed to be the thing that healed her enough to live on, but of course it's not enough, and now she requires to get more people, so she asks Alex to gather a bunch of personal items for every kid in his classroom. He follows through with her request in the hopes that if she recovers from her illness, she will leave him and his family alone, which answers the question of why and how this is all happening. At this point, I saw some major plot holes in this reveal, but the film actually does a good job at tackling all of them. Ever since it was revealed that the kids were inside Alex's basement, I was honestly questioning why the cops haven't solved this mystery. If this kid was the only one to not go missing, why wouldn't they question the parents or investigate his home? But Gladys is a very clever one who plans to send the kids out into the woods while the FBI are investigating and threatening Alex's parents in order to keep him from speaking out. And just with that one sequence of explaining all these things, all my little plot holes that I came up with in the first two acts quickly faded away. And it's not just some cheap way to try to explain out some of these plot holes. I think it was actually very clever, and the film sold me enough on it to actually fully believe that she was able to pull this off up until this point. And let me use this as a time to absolutely praise Amy Madigan as Gladys in this film, who is an inherently absurd character inside of this film. She is doing voodoo magic to kidnap all of these kids. Her makeup and outfits she wears throughout the film are almost clownish, and her eccentric behavior is so over the top. But in the more intimate moments between her and Alex, she's absolutely chilling in her performance. And if you have a fear of clowns, I think that this character, despite not being a clown herself, somehow taps into that same phobia. The final act of this film is so much fun. Like I mentioned, this film starts off with such an eerie and terrifying tone with self-destructive and sad characters. The tone is dour, and the story of all these missing kids felt reminiscent of Dark or Prisoners. But by the time we reach the final 20 minutes, we are in full Sam Raimi camp territory, and it somehow felt like a natural progression. Justine and Archer go to Alex's home to see Paul and Anthony there, frozen like Alex's parents before. Speaking of them, they are also standing guard behind a layer of salt outside of Gladys's room as she warns Alex not to cross it. Once Justine and Archer do enter the home, crossing the line of salt, all hell breaks loose and Paul and Anthony are weaponized against them in a very tense but also hilarious sequence as we see Archer trying so hard to either knock Anthony out or throw him across the room, but he keeps on just springing back up and sprinting towards him, screaming at the top of his lungs. It was so incredibly funny, but the tension remained just as strong as it was at the beginning of the film, only with a drastically different tone. Justine is eventually able to get a hold of Paul's gun and takes both him and Anthony out, which officially ends her toxic relationship with this man in probably the most appropriate way. Sad, I guess, but it's probably for the better. In all of the chaos, Alex attempts to enter Gladys's room, which sparks his parents to go after him. He is able to escape behind closed doors and weave through his home in order to get into that room and attempts to mimic Gladys's ritual to go against her. This is where we get the greatest scene in cinema history, as all 17 of the missing children are weaponized against Gladys. She of course realizes what is going on and does what anyone would do when faced against 17 murderous children. She runs for her life. The kids smash through doors and windows, unrelenting in their goal to tear Gladys to shreds in such a glorious manner. It is so absurd. The images of the kids diving through windows is so funny to me, and once they finally do reach her, the way they rip her apart limb from limb was so incredibly gory, but most importantly, it is so satisfying to watch. Once she is gone, Alex's parents are freed from their spell along with the 17 kids, and we get the creepy voiceover from the kid from the beginning of the film, now wrapping up the story as we cut to credits.
This is where the story really starts.
This movie is absolutely insane. I was in tears laughing by the end of this film, and if you were to tell me that this movie would make me cry, I would have never guessed in a million years that it would be because of laughter. This movie is truly a roller coaster of emotions. It takes you from true horror inside of the first act to absolute cinema comedy gold in a way that I really haven't ever seen before. Cregger takes the structure of Barbarian in its abrupt shifting perspectives and perfects it with 6 chapters exploring this town dealing with this truly bizarre and horrific situation with a weird sense of humor. I truly haven't had this much fun with the movie in quite some time. It's a theater-going experience I will not soon forget, and one that I cannot wait to experience again. Yes, this movie is flawed in its pacing within the second act, but its purpose in the story is not unfounded, and Cregger's unique approach to this type of structure is one that continues to inspire me as a writer. Barbarian was great. I absolutely love that movie, but I think that Weapons is so much better. There is a growing number of new voices in horror, and Zach Cregger continues to prove that he belongs near the top of that list. But those are just going to be my thoughts on Zach Cregger's Weapons. Were you on board with the wild ride that this movie takes you on, or were you alienated by the bizarre approach that Cregger takes? I am very curious to hear your thoughts on this film in the comment section down below. And as always, if you did enjoy this review and want to see more, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel to see more reviews just like this. So thanks everyone for watching, and I hope to see you all in my next one.